Welcome to the course Guidelines for Dashboard Conceptualization. This course is aimed at people who are looking for new and creative ways to visualize data, without necessarily having to resort to a bunch of numbers, charts, tables, which is what we have always been used to. The first lesson is about the characteristics of good visualizations. To understand the characteristics of good visualizations, we will refer to the theory proposed by Stephen Few. Stephen Few is considered one of the most renowned authorities in data visualization, and he always tells us that a good visualization takes the burden of effort off the brain and puts it on the eyes. What does he mean by that? When there is a good visualization, our brain does not have to work. The visualization must be so strong, so powerful, that it tells us the story immediately, without great effort, interpretation, or analysis. The story is simply shown there as on a picture or a painting, where we see at once that it's about a landscape, a mountain, whatever it may be, without the need to interpret what is painted in that picture. A good visualization has the same effect, and obviously, good visualizations meet a series of requirements or specifications that we will analyze right now. First off, it is that it's based on data. A visualization is not random figures or graphs. It shows data that give shape, give life, and obviously, the visualization produces an image. That image speaks about the data. It tells the story about the data. It brings to the table what was found after the data was analyzed. And that result should be readable and recognizable. This means that I can see and understand the visual representation, and that I understand what the data that support it is about. I recognize a tendency, a comparison, a behavior by just looking at that visualization, and I can interpret those data. When we speak about visualizations, we must not forget that there are three key elements that are related to each other. We have the designer and his or her data, but we also have the reader that is frequently forgotten. The reader is our user, our audience, to whom we want to show the story told by the data. So, if the designer does not understand the reader's capabilities, characteristics, or nature, the visualization cannot tell the story to the reader in a way he or she needs to listen to it. On the other hand, the reader needs to understand those data that the designer is seeking to convey through visualization. And the designer should focus on the data and on what they represent in order to communicate the message sought to the reader. And so, when we create visualizations, we should keep in mind some recommendations from Edward Tufte, considered one of the fathers of data visualization and who best summarized those recommendations. He found powerful ways to tell stories hidden behind the data. The first thing that Tufte recommends is that through visualizations, we must get the audience to think about important messages conveyed by the data. How do we know if a visualization is successful in the end? It is successful when the user looks at it and immediately gets involved in the data, starts to talk about the data, to discuss, to have doubts, to generate new concerns that they want to investigate further after a while. Another recommendation from Tufte, almost as a commandment, is that when we are creating the visualization, we must be very careful not to distort what the data means. And this is something that we often fail to do, consciously or unconsciously, due to how we represent data, and we will deal with this in a few lessons ahead. The way in which we represent data can hide the story, or it may even fool the audience. And ethically, we must ensure that every visualization we make does not break that rule. Another recommendation is that even if many data are provided in a small space, and we must not forget that a page, a slide, a dashboard, whatever, is a small space, it is not unlimited in terms of space. When there is a lot of data and the visual representation may be even a table, we must highlight those data that are really important. In future lessons, we will find some ways to emphasize those data through color, bold, font size. There are many ways to say, look, this is more important than this that you are looking at on this dashboard. And finally, the audience must be encouraged to compare different pieces of information through our visualization. And that comparison can be done in many ways. It may be a timeline. We can see the behavior of an indicator over the years. We may want to compare one region to another, the country to another country, or departments and towns between them. I almost forgot, but it is important to remember that data must be disclosed with different levels of detail. What does this mean? We could say that we must go from an overview to a more detailed vision, to a finer level of analysis. When users go into our visualization, at first we present the general data, maybe the result of a country-level indicator, but we always give them the possibility to work on and reduce their level of analysis from the country to the department or even to the local level, depending on how data are organized from the most general to the more specific levels. So, this is the end of the lesson, but I would like to review the most important concepts that we have seen in this lesson. First, the eyes are the ones doing the work. In a visualization, the brain rests and the eyes work. Visualizations tell the story of data. We make visualizations not only because they look nice. We make them because there are data that we want to convey. There is important information that has been analyzed and that we want to bring to the table so that it can be analyzed by the user. We must also seek harmony between the trinity, harmony between the designer, the reader, and the data, and how those elements interact to tell the story. And finally, we must never distort the story. We must ensure that our visualization is a true and accurate reflection of the data represented.